What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dynasty Underdog. Billy Beeman here. Got Jake Cornblum with me. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right, man. This DU6 startup is honestly, it's moving at like a really nice pace in comparison to most of our degenerate startups, which are kind of
Mm-hmm.
done by now, right? Like in a typical DU startup, we're talking like day 5, day 6, and we're 90% done. We're only sitting in round 10. So it is we're a third of the way through basically, and it's kind of crawling, but in like a kind of a nice way. It's a bit of a kickoff for me into our move, and like literally found out today, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even tell you, officially approved, we are going to be moving. So
Congrats.
super
Congrats.
excited about that, but also at the same time it's like I want to finish this draft now because I'm just like, this
Don't want to
thing
be
is,
abroad thinking about
yeah,
this thing.
literally. I have like a 25-hour travel day on the first day that we're moving there, and
Holy
it's like
crap. Oh
I
my
don't
God.
I don't need that to be like looming over my head. But regardless, I've been having a great time. Really just trying to put my life back together. But yeah, how about yourself? How are you doing?
Good. I mean, at least there's a 12-hour clock if you do get stuck in that situation. So you'll
True.
be just fine. You'll be just fine. But yeah, no, same. The DU6 draft has kind of threw me and I feel like everyone else for a loop. That's kind of why it's crawling. Like there's been certain picks where I'm like sitting on them, either trying to make a trade or come to terms with what I'm about to do, given the scoring settings have changed, quite a bit. And adding, which we didn't talk about, a week or two ago or whatever, where there's, two tight ends are required to start. So really, I think threw everybody through for a loop and changed how people drafted. So definitely an interesting draft. I can't wait for it to be done so that we can kind of review it on here. That'll be fun. But enjoying it while it lasts. That said, before we get going here, I do want to throw out a quick announcement, quick pod announcement. Um, life changes, priorities shift, those kind of things. So unfortunately, Uriah will no longer be co-hosting the podcast. We will definitely miss him. Um, Got to give him a ton of credit because he really did start this whole thing up. Like he came to me, many years ago, probably 5, 6 years ago now, and was like, I have an idea for a podcast. We want to call it Dynasty Underdog, help, newcomers to Dynasty kind of get their feet wet and get their footing rather. And he came up with the logo, came up with, or at least went out and acquired the original song, intro song, theme song. And so he did a lot. He contributed a lot to this podcast, to this community, to the brand and everything. So, big shout out to Uriah. Will never be forgotten in that regard. And also good news is he'll still be in the Discord, still be in the listener league. So we will still be in touch. So it's not like, it's not goodbye, it's see you later kind of thing. But Jake and I will do our best to shepherd this thing forward, echoing kind of what I said in the Discord. So just wanted to throw that out there. Big shout out to Uriah. Again, foundational, member of this brand, this podcast. So definitely deserves his due credit there. And, hope he gets the time with his family and all that good stuff that he well deserves at this point. So with that said, we're going to continue on with the podcast, continue on with our prospect profiles. Very excited to get into those today. We're planning on doing a couple more, but time caught up with us. So we're going to be hitting on Elijah Sarratt, Omar Cooper Jr., both the Indiana guys, Chris Brazzell, Germie Bernard, and Jacoby Lane. So got, Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee, Germie Bernard out of Bama, and then Jacoby Lane out of USC. So got some really good ones to jump into today. But before we do that, I mean, I guess we talked about it already. Any other thoughts on the startup? Before we get into the prospect profiles here?
No, the only thing I wanted to add is that I do think that changing up some of the settings really does kind of help startups have their own personalities and kind of help the group engage with each other differently. This is definitely
Mm-hmm.
one of the more active trading startups that I think any of the DU listener leagues have had. We're talking, I actually didn't even count so far, and this is just more so based off of the amount of time. But if I had to guess, we're probably touching somewhere between 20 to 25 trades so far that have occurred within the first 10 rounds. And
Mm-hmm.
it has been noticeable. You have felt it. And I would say almost every single trade that has occurred has also been incredibly intentional. And I also think relatively successful for both parties for the most part. I don't think that there's really been any trade that has been a true like eye roller for the rest of the group. And I would say for the most part, most folks are really engaged. We are really seeing a lot of different strategies at hand. You're right. Like Billy started out this draft as a true QBX borderline arms race. Might have lost Billy, and it's pretty incredible to see kind of like what he's been able to do in a draft that I don't even know if that's necessarily how he wanted to start. And it's borderline ironic that he ends up getting pushed out of the, or maybe coincidental, that he got pushed out of this conversation, considering that he is the person that I wanted to kind of pass it to kind of talk through how that happened and why he wanted to go that direction. Because I really don't think that going into this draft, considering that it is start two tight end and also with two or plus one tight end premium, so two PPR for tight ends, what he was going to do in that situation. So I do feel like a true underdog, just kind of manning it myself. It's funny because a lot of the draft has felt relatively chalk around the tight ends in terms of their actual rankings, but not for their actual ADP. So, like sitting at like KTC value, you're looking at like Bowers, McBride, Loveland, Warren, Fannin as your top 5 tight ends. I almost feel like is a perfect match. Billy, welcome back. I'm glad to see you're live. I was just maintaining
Can you
a
hear me?
singular. Yeah, I can hear you. You had fallen
Okay.
out completely from the interface as well as your image. Everything just died immediately, and
I'm
so
fully
I was
aware.
talking to myself, which I'm really good at. But what I was actually talking about was wanting to talk through how you started off with basically drafting 4 quarterbacks, almost 3 of those being elite quarterbacks. So starting off the draft with Burrow, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, and Jared Goff.
You can still hear me, right? Just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes. All right, cool. So this will work. Jesus Christ, my whole setup just spaz. Yeah, so the obviously not obviously, but to you probably, Jake, obviously, that was not my necessary that necessarily wasn't my strategy going into this. I have never really gone like that arms race, QBX type thing. I know this is more arms race, but 4 quarterbacks at that level is I'd say almost QBX. If I added one more to it, you could probably call it both. But yeah, like it was really just what the draft gave me. It was really because I think people got in over their heads a little bit with the tight ends, it being start 2 tight ends and 2 point per reception for tight ends. They really hit those hard. But I think, people would have been, I think, suited a little bit better if they were to let like the Tyler Warrens fall to me or something like that, right? Eat up the quarterback value. And then some of those tight ends a little bit later can still give you what a Tyler Warren or those kind of guys will give you, right? Because of those bonuses. So you don't necessarily, I mean, obviously you want one of those top 3 tight ends. Don't get me wrong. Like definitely do. But I think outside of that, you could have started fading it into like the second, third rounds and still gotten some really good value there and still had an elite QB in your back pocket, right? Now for me, I just figured if they're going to fall to me, I'm going to take them. And at some point, I do think somebody is going to, come looking for a QB. They're going to, there's going to be an injury and now they're going to be down to 1 quarterback and I'm going to have the best options out there. Right. And, Jared Goff isn't elite by any means, but I think he's severely undervalued, to be honest, and especially with a guy like Petzig coming in who is going to, bring a pass happy offense. They're already pretty good. They're not losing any weapons really. He's, age at that quarterback position, the way he plays, I think isn't a bad thing, to be honest, right? He's just getting smarter. And so that was kind of my idea there. But I mean, it did kind of hurt me in the tight end department. I definitely faded that quite a bit. So I just think that this build allows somebody to, anybody who does it allows them to kind of make up for where they're losing value elsewhere, not only by the weekly advantage of just having these options at QB, but also what you can trade them for down the road. When, you know, when things get tough, I think you're going to be in a good position. I'm going to be in a good position in, you know, this league to take advantage of that. So that's my thoughts there. Sorry, I don't know if you asked anything else. I was obviously trying to get myself back into the show here, but
no,
any
I
other
can.
thoughts from you?
No, outside of that, it has been really interesting because I do think a lot of people use outside tools to track ADP, and this is borderline an ADP-less draft, right? Like using outside sources like that, I feel like is almost problematic. I think it gets you into a headspace of taking guys at or maybe above value or vice versa, or you're undervaluing tight ends, potentially undervaluing picks. This is definitely one of those startups where we saw the first round of rookie picks finish just now in the 10th round. So we just had the 112 get drafted at the 10:03. That feels a lot later than other years. I don't know if that's just simply
Sure.
narrative driven or if that's a mixture of a few things based off of the scoring format, based off of how certain teams are drafting. I do think that we have a very interesting group of teams that are already kind of going into that productive struggle in the startup or coming out of the startup looking like that after only 10 rounds. It sounds kind of crazy to say that, but I do think that that is very much a reality, or at least using their resources in a competitive way, but maybe basically accepting the fact that they won't be competing at the same level as some of the other builds. And I think that will kind of change the landscape of how the micro market itself is going to work in the league. And it sounds nuts to say that, truly. We're not even 10 rounds done. And I do feel like certain teams have really defined themselves for like what 2026 is going to look like. And vice versa, right? There's certain teams that have already traded away almost their entire available future because they are so committed to 2026, or maybe they're even committed to the 2026 rookie draft class. And it's really interesting just to kind of see the different mechanisms at play, because I don't think that coming into this draft, I was so certain that certain folks were going to draft the way that they were. The last thing I did want to add really quickly is that we did get to have a Kentucky Derby style draft order selection. And one of the things that I did really notice from my perspective is how much additional value I think that there was at the back end of the draft. And I happened to place myself between two individuals that I happen to really think that their drafts are going very well for them in different directions. But specifically, just wanted to shout out Firm Handshake because we've been messaging on the side and dude has been sniping me left and right. We've basically just been going hand in hand with like where we're seeing value. And it's made it really difficult for me to get exactly where or who I want to get in those individual moments, because I do think that there are almost pretty strong tier breaks at some of those picks, and it becomes really challenging to get into it gets really challenging to get into the right spots. Anything else you wanted to add there?
I mean, yeah, I guess just, you know, I'm not going to go through the whole like proximity paradox theory. I do think having two picks close together is super beneficial, especially if, you know, values fall the way they did, and that isn't how it worked out. I think a little bit specific to this draft because it, you know, the way that the scoring is and the lineup settings are, it almost forces certain elite talents that you would expect to be at the top of the draft down, but it's supposed to. I mean, that's what the settings are supposed to do, even things out a little bit, right? Like it's supposed to make it so other positions are worthy of being picked there, including the tight ends, and it should push some down. I think it pushed too many down, and it almost felt like I had a top of the draft pick at the back of the end of the draft, and then you add in that the third round reversal is there where I get the third pick a little bit earlier than I technically would, and that's how I was able to get a Jalen Hurts, right? So I do in general like being at the back of drafts. I think that often there are 2 to 3 people in your league that are going to let some value slip down or reach on certain players. And that's where you can really take advantage of it. And then you get the back-to-back pick. I mean, I'm talking 11 or 12 pick. I think both of those are perfectly fine. You can do the same thing from both positions, really. And usually in a normal draft, I would say the same thing about 1 and 2. I think that's a little bit reduced when you have the third round reversal. That's all. But we'll talk a lot more about this draft as we complete it. I'm sure we'll have almost a whole episode talking about, just the whole breakdown of it and who did what. So very exciting, very fun stuff. Thank you, everybody who's participating in that draft. Shout out to all those great listeners. Okay, before we hop into the prospect profiles, real quick here, just hit on some YouTube comments. I've been neglecting them. My bad. I have 2 jobs now. So Matt Wiggins in the YouTube comments, sup suckas. Shane suckas following. Tony here pouring out for Uriah. He will be missed. Absolutely. Shout out Tony. And then I think talking about the quarterbacks that you were mentioning, I selected those are rookie numbers. Okay, fair enough. They all thought I quit as well, but I did not. I promise. And yeah, I think we'll leave the other comments for the YouTubers out there. Anyway, okay, let's move it forward here. Let's get into these prospect profiles. We are going to talk about these Indiana wide receivers first. Pretty interesting duo here. We're going to hop into Elijah Sarratt. He's going to be our first one. Let me hit on the data here real quick. So just running through it. Again, Elijah Sarratt, Indiana. Yards after the catch per reception, 4.8. ADOT 9.6. Slot percent 13.7. That's pretty low. Yards per team pass attempt, 2.2. Not bad. Yards per route run, 2.39. In a similar vein, not the best. It's okay. Contested catch percentage, 40%. On the lower end. First down per route run, 14.2%. Man yards per route run, 3.03. Pretty good. Zone yards per route run, 2.24. It's pretty solid. Nothing to write home about. I do think that the yards after the catch per reception, if I remember correctly, as I pull my stuff up here, that definitely translated to the film. 4.8 yards per reception is not great. That's very few after the catch. If you don't already know, Jake, I'll let you kick us off. What did you think of Elijah Sarratt from a film perspective?
Yeah, I was also going to say if it would be helpful, maybe throwing up just that portion of the sheet for the folks who are watching. I know that's a lot of numbers. And, I do think that a lot of the film grading that we're going to provide actually does match up to the number narrative on this guy a little bit. Basically, what I think is Elijah Sarratt is a back shoulder, just kind of like game hawk dude, right? Like he's got basically 1 or 2 moves he uses pretty consistently on the boundaries, in the corner of the end zone. He is particularly great with his hands. I do love the way. Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. Just a slight zoom, I think.
Sure. How dare you?
Yeah, I know. I'm a needy. Yeah, perfect. That's sick. Thank you. And with that, I do think that there were some separation issues. I felt that there were some footwork issues, and those were like the 2 major dings. I also had issues with his ability to beat the press and his release concepts. I honestly had him pretty hard knocked all over route technique, except for pacing. I did find that his pacing was actually particularly good, especially for over the middle routes, where you don't really get a ton of reps from him in the game footage. And Elijah Sarratt was one of the guys that we actually had a lot more game footage of during this grouping than some of the other dudes. So that was pretty noticeable to me. Jumping down into where he really gets dinged the hardest outside of route technique was going to be contested catches. I just didn't find that his catch radius allowed him to win around defenders. It was mainly in those micro movements, typically at the stem, where he was gaining minimal separation, but then allowing his hands to basically win. He's really good at feigning, I should say, when the ball is going to arrive, which I found also was buoyed or helped by his ability to ball track. Jumping into athleticism, knocks him really hard in bursts and speed, yak ability. I just didn't really see a particularly elusive or a game-changing receiving option for the team. He really was more so just a standard possession receiver who had basically a singular outbreaking and inbreaking move that allowed for him to create minimal separation, but had particularly great hands to make him relatively successful at the college level. I wasn't particularly high on him all arounds, but he did receive one of my highest zone awareness ratings or grades this entire draft class. I think that's where he really does shine, being able to find that pocket between the safeties and corners, or sometimes between the corners and linebackers, is exactly like where he found his highest grading, but also where I think he found his most success from like a statistical perspective as well, which was the exact opposite of Omar Cooper Jr., his teammate, who we'll talk about in a little bit, but basically had zero zone awareness. So it's like seeing the two of them, it was like, man, if the two of you just like had a baby, you guys would probably be a pretty elite wide receiver. But the fact that you both have such major deficiencies in certain areas really made it difficult to love either of them. So I'll just kind of leave it there with Elijah Sarratt, so you can think about him having a baby with Omar Cooper Jr.
That's right where we want to be. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I just looked at the grades. We graded them out, or the grades ended up being, nearly identical from a total score perspective. I definitely agree with you from the zone awareness stuff. I think excellent zone awareness, both settling into and adjusting slightly through zones to become available for the QB. Definitely good, field vision before the catch. But there's really not much after the catch because he doesn't do much with it. So I agree with you there. I mean, one of the lower athleticism scores, I just didn't really see much elusiveness. His best attribute is probably his balance because he's a little bit, more of a sturdy, bigger body guy. Definitely agree with you from a ball skills perspective. Thought the hands were his best trait. Contested catch was, a 3 out of 5, so just above average. Nothing to write home about, really. And then I really thought that he lacked from a route technique perspective. He definitely displays some pacing and suddenness at the top of the route and some from the release, but he just lacks suddenness through the stem. He does offer some detail in terms of, hip shift, shoulder, head fakes, those kind of things, but he just lacks separation because he is just really not fast enough. But he does create some space at the top of the route. I'll give him credit for this. He uses his hands to physically separate from defenders. So that's really where he creates that separation to get to the catch point. Just unrefined, slow footwork, just doesn't really have much to beat press. So overall, for me, I think he's really more of a boundary possession receiver. He really plays almost exclusively out wide. Again, lacks that athleticism and high-end play speed, but makes up for it as much as he can with savvy body control and ball tracking. Really, and I have here in my notes, comeback and back shoulder merchant, so aligns with what what Jake said. And yeah, I guess that's really where we can wrap it up. Leave you with that. Him and Omar Cooper having a baby and back shoulder merchant. Okay, that's what we got for you. I'm not going to be super interested in Sarratt, but I totally can see him being like a decent pro, like an okay pro that, 40, 50 catch guy, something like that kind of thing, but just nothing that's really going to make a difference from a fantasy perspective. And again, I mean, I think whenever you have a guy who can't do much with it after the catch, that's kind of where he's going to end up. Like, you need to be able to produce after you get the ball in your hands at the next level. And so that's going to be a pretty big ding for anybody who doesn't grade well in there. Okay.
And the only thing I'll add just on top of that is that we both have Sarratt currently, unfortunately, graded out as both of our second worst wide receivers so far this class. So both Billy and I have Malachi Fields somehow at the same exact scoring and grading at a 42.5. Billy has Elijah Sarratt 8 points above that. So that is pretty significant. I have Sarratt 9 points ahead of Malachi Fields at 51.5. So
That's
just
crazy.
something to be aware of.
He was bad.
He was. I don't think he was bad. I just don't think that what he has to offer translates to anything more than a pretty basic role type receiver. And there's a reason why he was successful in college. I just don't think that that's going to translate all that well.
You talking about Fields or Sarratt?
Oh, I was talking about Sarratt. Yeah, not.
Oh yeah,
I know.
I agree. Sarratt's
we
not.
made it. We made it clear that we're not talking about Fields ever again.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're on
What
the
was
same
it?
page.
Malachi Corley and Justin Fields had
Justin
a baby
Fields,
or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question here in the YouTube chat. Shane hits us with, does Sarratt go top 50? I would be utterly shocked if he went top 50 personally. That's mid-second?
Yes. I'm answering your question. I'm not saying yes to Sarratt going top 50.
No, I understand. Yeah, I don't think he does personally, but I guess I wouldn't put it past the league to do that. So I could see it.
Yeah, I think the narrative of being like a national champion definitely helps. But if anything, like I would hope that it would help Omar Cooper Jr. more than him.
Right.
So let's jump into Omar Cooper Jr.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. From a statistical perspective here, a little bit better than Sarratt, 7.2 yards after the catch per reception. That's pretty good. A.dot 9.7. Not really too worried about that. It's okay. Slot percentage 83.3%. That is super high, and that's never really a ding. It's a good thing. Yards per team pass attempt 2.5, pretty good. Yards per route run 2.55, decent. Contested catch percentage 50, not very high. First down per route run 11.99%, pretty good. That's really good. Man yards per route run 1.81. I'm actually kind of surprised by that. I guess I really shouldn't be because we'll get into it. I don't think the route technique is great. Zone yards per route run though 3.15. That is fantastic. So he is dominating in those zones, which we know is that does translate at the next level. So especially with the kind of the role he'll be playing. So what do you think about Omar Cooper Jr., Jake?
Yeah, I think you already alluded to it, but I'll read out my route technique bit that I have. Exciting outbreaking wide receiver from the slot with elite speed and acceleration into and out of routes. Cooper's ability to decelerate in man coverage is super prevalent on screen, but Cooper fails to have the same vision and control when looking at his zone awareness, which is pretty absent from his tape. Love Fernando's play. That'd be Fernando Mendoza. But his unique ability to go for some of the more conservative throws on almost every snap really hindered Cooper from shining more on his bigger over-the-top routes, which I do think would have also helped his yards per route run in man as well. And his just in general, I think you only see them so frequently because they're not as enacted upon from Mendoza, so therefore you just don't see a ton of them on tape from Cooper. Cooper's notable perks here come from his ability to separate and awareness of pacing mid-route. I do think that his extreme athleticism kind of gives him this ability to slow down, decelerate, and then accelerate again mid-route, which I haven't really seen a whole heck of a lot of. It does kind of remind me of Zachariah Branch, but we were able to see all 22 here. And so I was able to give, I think, a little bit more accurate feedback of where Cooper actually falls off from. I'm really hitting him hard at manipulation movement, his release concepts, beating the press, and his stem nuance. But I did hit him with some pretty decent perks or pluses on separation and pacing. I thought his footwork was a little bit above average. There's definitely a lot going on, and sometimes I think it can be almost a little too cumbersome to what he's trying to do. It feels like a little overcomplicated. But outside of that, jumping into ball skills, we're looking at a relatively consistent and efficient hands receiver. I gave his hands at a 3.5 out of 5. His contested catches was reasonable and fair. It was visible on tape, but I don't think it was anything to give him anything more than above average. Relatively short catch radius between him and also Elijah Sarratt, so just something to be aware of. This is Omar Cooper Jr. that I am talking about, but his body control was 100% there. I think that was one of the things, mainly being in the slot. you do get a lot of these moments where a ball is potentially behind you, a ball is maybe mistimed. And I did feel like his ability to basically stop, reposition his hands was really, really noticeable, especially in those in-breaking routes where he's just kind of like pacing himself particularly well over the middle, jumps into this extreme acceleration, and I almost feel like Fernando was unable to match that timing rhythm, and so he ends up either underthrowing or overthrowing him, and Cooper more often than not was able to adjust. So that was something I noticed, and hit him with a 2 out of 2.5 there, which in the past I found out that I was rating that out of 5. Okay, we live and we learn. Lastly, athleticism, which is where I do feel like Cooper Jr. does actually gain a large plus over his competition. I have elusiveness at a 3.5. You really do see that post catch. His burst at a 4.5. That's out of 5. I felt like his burst or ability to break out from top end speed into almost like a second gear from nothing was pretty exceptional, and that's where I did kind of give him the most boost. Speed at 3.5. I don't think he was as electric at top end speed as all of the other high end receivers in this draft from a speed perspective. So that was something that I was just trying to be conscientious of. Yak ability is definitely there. I think with his build, he's able to kind of break through some tackles relatively well, not incredibly well, but relatively well. And also just his general lower body movement, which with that, his balance was exceptionally great. One of the things that I did notice between him and also, I believe it was Chris Brazzell, who we'll talk about a little bit later, but like both their abilities to basically tightrope the sideline was like truly exceptional. Omar Cooper Jr. does have that ability, and something that I did want to call out. Last thing that I did ding him on pretty hard, I did not find his blocking technique and or strength to be anything admirable or wanting to be talked about. But I will also say that was the same thing with his zone awareness. Like, even though he has pretty strong zone yards per out run, he doesn't actually have strong zone awareness. So what that really means here is that he's taking advantage of the zone based off of basically pre-existing routes that he is going to be running, but he's not actually able to manipulate the zone itself post basically completion of the route, which, funny enough, you do see a lot of with Fernando Mendoza, not because he's always trying to extend play, but when he does, there's a lot of opportunity for you to really learn a lot about each of these receivers, which is why with Sarratt, you really were able to get a good grasp of whether or not he had strong zone awareness. And with Omar Cooper Jr., I hit him pretty hard at a 2 out of 5 because honestly, he didn't make many adjustments in those zone pockets. Like, he literally is so flat-footed for someone who is moving so much pre-stem and pre-end of route. I just didn't really understand how it kind of just died off in the one area that you want him to be the most aware. So I have him at a 62 out of 100. That's relatively high in this current class for where we've been grading them, especially myself. So overall, I did like a lot of Cooper's high-end athleticism, and I did find that his hands did match that. He has a lot of work to do from a route technique perspective, and I do think that if his zone awareness does pick up, there's something there that can probably turn into a pretty successful wide receiver in the NFL. What about you?
Yeah, it's a good breakdown. And I'll just start with the zone awareness stuff because I literally have it highlighted in the grading chart because it was so low. I wanted to make sure I went back and took a look again, but just my notes doesn't appear to recognize zones or settle into them consistently for the QB. I give him a 1.5, a little bit lower than you. I think, when it comes to his successful, numbers versus zone, like that also means that there's just more space to work with. You don't have to necessarily, settle in them to take full advantage of them. You can still, work really well against them with your athleticism after the catch, all those kind of things. And so, him having good numbers in, zone yard per route run doesn't really necessarily mean that he's doing the most he can with it, right? Like, there's opportunities there that he's not taking full advantage of. By settling in there, following the QB, those kind of things, really recognizing them and making himself available immediately. So just wanted to point that out because I know that there's a little bit of a difference between the numbers and what we're talking about on film. I think you did like him a little bit more from a ball skills perspective, though. I didn't think he was bad at all. I gave him a 3.5 from ball tracking and hands perspective, contested catch 3. And then I agree that he has pretty good body control. I think that he does really well. Someone asked in the chat how the comebacks are. I think he's really good on comebacks because I think he gets his body turned around for the ball, and then he actually like almost adjusts while he's getting the ball to make himself available to create yards after the catch. So he kind of like squares himself up, and then he kind of recognizes, where to go with it. So I do think he has decent field vision post catch as well. Definitely a good athlete, excellent burst and lateral agility, displays the ability to create after the catch consistently, good balance to fight through contact as well. And I think he exhibits more burst than speed. So I gave him a 4 from a burst perspective, but 3 in terms of speed. I really just didn't see like the super high end speed, but the burst, I think that acceleration, it kind of creates a lot of room for him where he doesn't necessarily need the highest end speed to get the job done. He was okay from a route technique grading. Decent separation. I think he, shows some good pacing to lull defenders asleep from the release and burst through the stem. I do think that, through the stem, he lacks a little bit of technique, seems to use more speed and athleticism to win in that regard. Definitely displays an ability to beat press, but mainly with speed. So I didn't really give him a crazy release concept grade or anything like that. But he stacks defenders quickly when winning at the line of scrimmage. You see him get over top, get back into the stem of his route, and he's available for the target. So he's good. I do think that there's some refinement needed. I think he's more of kind of like that versatile Z type receiver, schemed open often to take advantage of the speed and quickness. Displays some nuance, good pacing, the ability to create separation mainly through athleticism. Does show some signs of technique through the stem and some diverse release packages to get free from press. So I got him at a 60.5, just under Jake. But again, these are fairly good grades, especially for this class. So, or this is a fairly good grade, especially for this class. Matt here is like my wife. Better check that storage bill. Yeah, that storage has been almost empty forever. Somehow I keep getting stuff saved in there. So we'll see. We'll attack that when we need to. But very, very. I love it. Very observant of you. Okay, cool. Anything else on Omar Cooper before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. Let's get into, let's see, does he have the third after his name? Brazzell?
I think it's second.
Second, sorry. So
yeah. Is it 2. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, cool. All right, Chris Brazzell, here we go. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm interested to hear Jake's thoughts on this. Let's talk about the data for Chris Brazzell. This is the wide receiver out of Tennessee. Yards after the catch per reception, 4. That lines up with the film, I'll tell you what. A.dot 15.7, that is very high. Also lines up with the film. Slot percentage 5.7. I'm surprised that's not lower, to be honest with you. That is fucking low. Yards per team pass attempt 2.3. Yards per route run 2.57. Those are okay. Contested catch percentage 41.2. That's pretty low. Surprising, honestly, I guess it's not surprising given how he plays, but you would think since he's more vertical that he would have more. First down per route run 10.71, decent mark. Man yards per route run 2.05, and zone yards per route run 3.07, which is very good mark right there. The data is hit and miss with him for sure. I think that it tells a very similar story to the film. But, Jake, what do you think about Chris Brazzell II? I know people are pretty excited about this guy, much like but the community gets excited about all these Tennessee wide receivers and they let us down. Jake, what are your thoughts?
Frequently, right? Like absolutely frequently. People just get absolutely beat over the head with these Tennessee wide receivers and they just... I don't know, man. They just lose faith, I think, is probably the reality of it all. Okay, Chris Brazzell. I have in my my route technique portion. I'll just read it straight up. Chris Jalen Hyatt Brazzell. Lukewarm, lanky ass jab step with the vertical acceleration. Not much coming out of this package outside of next level pacing. I did find that his pacing mid route and top of route were actually pretty solid. So that's where he gets a 3.5. His generalized speed helps him get a separation score of 3, which I think I'm being a little bit gracious with. Outside of that, he's getting hit really hard on release concepts at a 1.5, manipulation movement at a 1.5, and footwork at a 1.5. Yeah, he's just kind of like a fucking tree, dude. Like he just doesn't have a lot. Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah. He's
trees
definitely
don't
like
run. Giraffes
they don't. Yeah, maybe. And you've never seen my trees. But yeah, like he just moves so. It's like it's cumbersome. It's like he's on stilts. He just doesn't have a lot of body control, and so I just didn't particularly see a lot that I liked outside of his generalized ball tracking, especially over the top. Dude has a fantastic way to catch over his body. He has a great ability to win contested catches. He's actually particularly strong mid-air, mid-catch as well. So I had ball tracking, hands, and contested catch all at 3.5, which is above average. His catch radius, he has incredibly long arms. I had at 2. His body control, though, I only had at 1.5. Elusiveness 2.5. Once again, I do think that he's more tree-like there than he is probably giraffe. At least giraffes are able to stay on their feet. I do find that he is not at times. Burst at 3.5. It was noticeable for me. His high end or top end speed, I gave him a 4. These types of wide receivers, your Troy Franklins, your Jalen Hyatts, these guys who can hit really high top end speed, I do think end up getting a little bit of a better grade in athleticism, but I don't think it ends up getting him anywhere near a NFL capable wide receiver. So his yak ability is still down at about average. His balance, like I had alluded to before, I did find that he was able to kind of hover and balance along the sidelines particularly well. So that was pretty noticeable, even though he did feel so elongated. Lastly, I didn't find within his actual route running there to be all that much zone awareness, so I dinged him pretty hard there at a 2 out of 5. Field vision was present but not great. Sideline awareness was present but not great, so both those were hitting at a 3 out of 5s. So really we're talking about a lanky dude who doesn't engage a ton in blocking, isn't particularly a route technician, and was really just an athlete who's going to run straight. You know what you're getting with a Brazzell type. He'll blow past defenders over the top to stretch the field, but doesn't have much more nuance to his game outside of being a singular play or two difference maker in fantasy football. So I'm not super excited about him. I definitely see why people are hyped. He's like a big play dude his highlights were fun and exciting because he scores touchdowns. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it really translates. And you really kind of see that because he was a 4th-year player, came from Tulane, and you really don't see all that much adaptation or change in his game from some of his early Tulane tape all the way to what he's doing at Tennessee. So not super excited. I did grade him a little bit higher than you. I think I saw a little bit more in the ball skills and athleticism to potentially translate to those areas being a little bit more NFL caliber, but he still hit at a 56 out of 100. I just don't think that that's going to translate particularly well. What about you?
Interesting. Yeah, real quick here in the comments, they ask Brazzell to run a route in the slot. He says, "Nah, I'm good." Absolutely. And then Matt said the T law of wide receivers. He corrected himself here. The T law of wide receivers.
I respect
why
that.
we gotta. Why, yeah, I bet you respect that, Jake. I bet you do. Why we gotta kill T law like that? I don't feel come on, man. Like this guy is not anything to write home about. I do get why people are excited about him, but to me, I'll hit on the overall, and I'll get into some of the details. But vertical receiver with good speed and burst to quickly create space, but unrefined in terms of route nuance, almost exclusively lined up to the right boundary. Great sideline awareness considering he's so familiar with it. So in terms of ball skills, I mean, you might have liked him a little bit more than me. What I thought was that he had really good ball tracking. Like it almost no matter where the ball, kind of the trajectory of it is, he is able to secure it somehow. But I gave him a little bit lower of a grade from a hands perspective, and not much. I still think he's well above average, but ball tracking 4, hands 3.5. Contested catch 3.5. He does make some of those for sure, but I think from a catch radius, I have a little lower than you because in my opinion, he like dinosaur arms deep receptions sometimes and just receptions in general. For all the arm length he has, it's not he's not always extending for it. He's really kind of like halfway there, but he does have good ups. He does kind of position himself well, has good enough body control to get himself, in position to secure the target. So I definitely think there's some hit and miss aspects of his ball skill game, but he definitely can secure the thing. So don't want to discredit him too much. Route technique, I thought he actually separated pretty well. I gave him, and maybe I'm being way more generous than I need to be here. I gave him a 3.5. I know you gave him a 3 there, but outside of that, I agree with you. Very lackluster in terms of stem nuance, beating the press, release concepts, and manipulation movement, nearly non-existent. I don't think he really has much pacing either. It's kind of all one speed, which definitely helps sometimes beating some of these guys, especially if they're real tight up against him. He's able to kind of just create space immediately with his athleticism, and they can't catch up. So definitely has that. I had a little bit higher sideline awareness. I think kind of joking, but also he is out at the boundary as far as any receiver really ever is, and you can see that he is able to kind of keep himself in bounds both after the catch sometimes, but also he's able to keep himself in bounds through the stem of the route when he has guys pressing him to the outside, which is kind of impressive given the lack of space he has there. So definitely give him credit from that regard. Really nothing here from a blocking perspective. The athleticism, I think he has more speed than burst. So I give him a 4 there, 3.5 in burst. And then outside of that, man, like all 2s, I thought he showed, some balance, some after the catch ability, but nothing that I think is going to translate at the next level. Like he gets taken down very quickly, first defender almost every time. You do see the occasional, jump cut kind of thing where he'll get a guy and create those like 3 or 4 yards, but there's really nothing else after that. So I'm not excited about this player. I do think we're in kind of another Jalen Hyatt type territory. This guy actually might have a little bit more than Hyatt had coming out, to be honest with you. But I just think from like a results perspective, like what we're going to get out of it is just not going to be enough to want to roster, to be honest. So I give him a 52. You give him a 56. That's definitely on the low end of this class and just in general, not the best score or range to be in. Any final thoughts on Brazzell before we move on?
No, I just wanted to shout you out because I think your read, or I guess calling out of him always being on the right boundary for his routes was I didn't notice it until you just said that. And it's true. Like when I was writing down like my notes, I constantly will like have like a notebook where I'm just like penciling in like where they're at. And I didn't even put together until I just like looked at it while you were saying that, how often he was on the right side of the formation. Like it's crazy. And not just on the right side of the formation, like he is literally like touching the boundary.
5.7% slot rate is insane, bro. Like that's never exiting the boundary, and he is never on the opposite side. Like if you're watching the film and you're like, where you know how sometimes when you watch film you're like, oh wait, where is he? I know they have the arrows, but sometimes you
knew exactly
fast forwarding, so you knew exactly where he was on every single route. There was never a doubt in your mind. So like it's and that in and of itself is going to be a tough transition to the NFL because you're not going to have a role outside of 5% routes that are always on the same side. So you're going to need to be able to move around, and he doesn't even have the experience of looking over his
other shoulder,
his right shoulder. He's always looking over his left, or he's so there's just going to be an adjustment period there if he's going to be successful at the next level. And I just feel like those are hurdles that are altogether combined going to be difficult to overcome.
So he's the Zoolander of
wide receivers. I can only turn left. Yeah, and he's now an ambi-turner is what we got from Matt Wiggins in the YouTube comments. Oh, I love that. Okay, good stuff. All right. So thank you. I appreciate the shout out. I'll take it anytime I can get it. Okay, moving forward here, we have 2 left. I want to save the one that we had on the sheet for ahead of this guy for last. We're going to go with Jacoby Lane first. Jacoby Lane here at a USC. Interesting data profile here. Talk about it. 4.8 yards after the catch per reception on the low side, similar to what we were looking at from Brazzell. A dot of 12.5. That's pretty high. 19.1% slot rate, much higher than the 4 or 5% we were just looking at a second ago, but still on the very low end. Yeah. Yards per team pass attempt 1.8. It's not very good. Yards per route run 2.44. That's fine. 43.5% contested catch rate, very mediocre. First down, actually probably less than mediocre. First down per route run 11.94%, pretty good. Man yards per route run 3.05. Zone yards per route run 2.88. So kind of the opposite from that perspective, from what we've seen typically in this class, to be honest, and especially with the receivers we're talking about today. Jake, give me your thoughts on Jacoby Lane.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. We actually haven't talked about him at all. I just looked at our grading. We're pretty similar.
Pretty close.
Super surprising. I'll start off with the overview. Contested catch freak. Hope he can open up a bit more in mid-depth routes, or else he'll just be a specialist who lacks the ability to truly separate at a high level. I found that his ability to separate at the collegiate level was present, but I didn't think that he was doing it at a high enough click for it to be translatable. Above average footwork. I had above average pacing, relatively average stem nuance, beating press, and release concepts. I didn't really notice anything that made him particularly sensational to talk through. The only thing that I will say is that I did find that his singular direction changes were particularly nice. So whenever he had a route where he only needed to make one particular movement, he was very efficient and successful. It was the double moves that he always failed at. So something just to be mindful of. From a ball skills perspective, he was probably one of the highest graders for this specific episode. I had him down as a 3.5 for ball tracking, 3.5 on hands, which honestly probably could have been closer to a 4. Contested catch, I had him at the highest of the day at a 4.5. And catch radius at 2 out of 2.5, body control at 2 out of 2.5. If there's anything you can do with this dude, I highly recommend watching. I think it was against, I don't actually remember who it was against, but there's this one fade where he runs and it's just clearly going to be an interception. And the dude just has this ability to just like lean over defenders and just kind of take the ball away from them. You really just don't see that a lot in general. I don't think that it's necessarily like the most pervasive skill from a collegiate level to the pros, but it was definitely something that I think that he needed to get graded a little bit better against the competition. So I had throw this man a fade, do it again, have him draped on by a defender, then have him get another target. He's catching a touchdown somewhere in there. He's absolutely filth. From athleticism perspective, I dinged him pretty hard here. Pretty low elusiveness. Doesn't have extreme burst or speed. He's really just a solid athlete all around. So I had him at average grading. Doesn't do all that much after the catch, which I think lines up with that 4.6 yards after yak per route run?
Yeah, yards after the catch per route. Yeah.
Per route. Yeah. Thank you.
Per reception. Sorry, per reception.
Oh, per reception. Okay. Awesome. And then I also had his balance at a 3 out of 5. Didn't really gain any grounds from a sideline awareness or zone awareness perspective. I did have him at sideline awareness a little bit above average. He, similar to Chris Brazzell, does line up typically wide out on the boundaries, but he does actually switch sides significantly more often. He does have a lot of sideline awareness. I do find that some of his extended catches over the boundary were particularly nice, a little bit better than majority of the class, but I didn't find him picking up a lot of pockets within the zone for me to really give him any additional points there. He's interesting. I do think that this is actually like one of those guys who, if he trains particularly well, I think this offseason and picks up a little additional speed, there's a chance that there's his draft capital, I think, will creep up a little bit. I think there's a world where he actually does have a pretty significant role in an offense that can be a little bit more translatable. I still only have him at a 57.5, which is relatively low, but I did like a lot of what he could do, especially in man. Like, his man work was pretty exceptional and really does show. So I'm not surprised by a 3.05 yards per out run in man. But yeah, what did you see?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously from our grade, I saw a lot of similar things, just with a note here, not necessarily impacting his grade, as you'll notice from my following comment. But I do feel as if often it's like he's running his routes at half speed. But when he's running his routes at full speed, he displays some good stem nuance and manipulation movement, good pacing from release through the stem, and exhibits ability to stack defenders quickly. Does a good job of selling opposing directions to defenders. So kind of, leaning inside or from release, kind of moving a guy inward if he's trying to, if it's, if he's playing, if he's trying to, if the defender is playing inside on him or outside, he's kind of does a good job of moving the defender. So from a separation perspective, I gave him a 3.5. Thought that was really probably his, the best part of his game. He creates good separation. He does an okay job beating press, so I gave him kind of average marks there. Okay manipulation movement. I think he has good footwork and pacing, so just above average in those regards. From a ball skills perspective, I had him actually just above you for ball tracking, hands, and contested catch. I thought he was really good there. I'm actually kind of surprised to see from the data that it's 43.5%. It's kind of hard to square those things when you watch the tape. I'm wondering if it's a percentage, so it's a percentage of what he did, but it was like 49 catches, so it's really not that many in general, to be honest. Maybe that's why it's a little bit lower. So almost half of his, what was it? Yeah, I guess almost half of his catches are contested catches, which kind of makes sense. Athleticism, he does get kind of dinged for me. I do think he has good speed for his size. I still only gave him an average mark there. You do see it mostly displayed, from release and the ability to kind of stack the defender, get back to the stem. I do think he lacks that lateral agility and bend below the waist, which contributes to his lack of yards after the catch ability. So got pretty low grades from that perspective, but he did have decent balance, so average grade there. Awareness in general, just above average. Pretty good blocker. I thought he was strong. Does lack some technique. He lets defenders get by him far too often, in my opinion. But he got a 59.5 from me. He has some. He's kind of like an all-around guy, but bigger body, contested catch, at the catch point kind of player. I do kind of agree with you. If he can develop some of the route technique, he'll have a chance for sure in this league. I do think that he has some skills that can translate. So, yeah, it's still to be seen. I think there's some refinement to be completed here for this player, but he does have kind of the size, the ball skills, and the foundation from a route technique perspective to get there, right? So yeah, an interesting player for sure. And like I said, just below a 60. So, some of the guys we've talked about before here, like Omar Cooper, and like not some of them really. Omar Cooper is the only one I guess I would liken to kind of in that range, right? So yeah. Any final thoughts on Lane before we move on to our final profile?
No, I think you hit it pretty well. Honestly, seeing him lined up where he was playing at USC, seeing the way that they used him, it really did feel like it was like Drake London light. He just doesn't have that just masterful route technician ability that Drake London had. And it was just like interesting because you see him and there are moments, to your point, where he almost looks lackadaisical and lazy. And then there's other moments where he's just like absolutely turning a dude. And you're just like, why couldn't I get more of that? The biggest issue and downside to like what we're watching, because Billy and I are watching the same library of tape, is we only got one full game of all 22 on him, which was the Purdue game this year. I do think that if we saw a little bit more, we might actually be a little bit more down on him. I think the Purdue game was maybe a little bit better statistically as well. So that's something that I'd be interested in. But once again, neither of us have like particular I see that Drake Paris.
That's a good comment. Drake
yeah.
France. That's funny.
But we don't have enough, I think, to be super confident in what's there. But Jacoby Lane, he played his entire career in Los Angeles. There's something there to be excited about. He's only 21, turning 22 in August. He's interesting for sure.
Definitely very interesting. Okay. Yeah, if we get some more all 22 on him, we'll definitely have a follow-up discussion about him on the pod just to see where we're at after that. Because I do agree, I'd like to see more from a route technique perspective, and that Purdue game definitely was his best statistical game. I think it was, a couple hundred. It was like 100 and some odd yards, and maybe a touchdown in there too. So definitely one of his better games, and I'd like to see some of his more underwhelming games maybe. But also the highlight tape out there that was there were some good plays on that too. I mean, it's a highlight tape. Obviously, there's going to be, but there were definitely certain clips that you were able to see the route technique come through as well, and watch the whole route. So yeah, we'll get more on him eventually. Okay, moving on to our final one here. I'm pretty excited to talk about this guy. The data is super interesting on him. We're talking about Germie Bernard out of Alabama. Usually these Alabama guys are, in the past have been pretty good, but the stock has not necessarily been up to par past couple years. This guy, let's talk about it. Yards after the catch per reception, 6.2. It's not the best, not the worst. ADOT 10.7. Again, that's actually, it's pretty good, especially for how he plays. Slot percentage 34.5%. That's pretty high. Yards per team pass attempt 1.6. That's not very high. Yards per route run 1.7. That's pretty low. You want to see both those numbers definitely closer to and above 2. Contested catch percentage 35.7. Not surprising given the tape, actually, but maybe not for the reasons some may think as I say that. First down per route run, 8.27. That's decent mark. Man yards per route run, 1.21, very low. Zone yards per route run, 1.82. Okay, but again, that's a number you want to see above 2. In general, you want to see these yards per route run numbers above 2, and I'm kind of surprised to see that. I don't know exactly what to attribute that to. Not always all on the wide receiver, but some of that's got to be on him. So, yeah, worth working through this. Jake, what are your thoughts on Germie Bernard out of Alabama?
Yeah, one thing I did want to include too is that he, like a lot of this group, are not early declares, but even more so, he's bounced around a shit ton. He did move from Michigan State as a freshman to Washington as a sophomore, had a decent little breakout there, and then came over to Alabama in 2024 when the head coach of Washington, I forgot his name, moved over to Alabama and took Germie with him. That being said, Germie's a really unique player because I do think that there's a lot to like on tape. But I do think that just even looking at these metrics, it really makes me want to be a little bit more cognizant of what I was seeing. That being said, I have flanker type route technique needs more refinement or effort. Maybe. Nope, that's you.
I was like, no way you wrote the same thing off rip that I wrote.
That's crazy. Where am I? Oh, he's at the bottom of the fucking thing. Jesus Christ, that was insane.
I was like, really, flanker type right off the rip? That's what I said.
No, I was gonna say my write up wasn't as nice for his overall review. Germie is interesting because he's pretty bang on average at everything and doesn't pop off the screen all that much. But I think averaging out at everything turns him into a pretty tempting wide receiver who has a clear knack for pockets in the zone to exploit. He definitely has issues in man as he has limited release concepts that are just okay and not a ton of beating the press reps that I really got to see all that much on tape. He's another guy that saw pretty solid scoring from me from zone awareness. He actually got 4.5. I found that him and Elijah Sarratt were the two guys that I noticed just immediately after they were either in some form of at the top of their route, at the end of their route, they were basically always peeking over their shoulder, which you just don't see at the college football level. Like, there aren't a lot of game intelligent players, and I did find that Germie was more noticeably always kind of looking over his left and right shoulder to see if there's a foot or two for him to start bouncing into. And I loved kind of the way in which he would move into those zones. I found that Sarratt was almost like more intentional, and Germie was almost kind of like he'd like labor into them. And I found it to
Mm.
almost be a better way for him to break into these like longer extended plays because he was able to slowly maneuver away from defenders and into these pockets. That being said, from a route technique perspective, I had him at pretty average all over. I did really like some of the work that he did at the stem, though. He didn't have a ton of nuance there, but I did find him to be exceptionally successful, especially considering that two of the games were against Georgia and LSU. One of the games was against FSU. FSU game was his best statistical game of the season. So I kind of passed it off. It was also week 1, so it's a little bit easier to find some of those pockets and also just be able to beat players. Especially in man is particularly easy. You'll see a lot of these guys actually have pretty amazing week 1s because defenses and players are just so out of shape usually at that point of the season.
Yeah,
So something to just be mindful of. So what I did say was most notably against FSU and LSU, Germie has the ability to make a few different manipulation movements mid-route that cause him to just be generally wide open. One of the few in the class where this is notable, since he doesn't have the sheer athleticism like the top of the class does, his downside is his inability to beat press, and his release concepts are really driving him into more opportunities to really show out his manipulation and solid footwork. I did find that his footwork was pretty good, which is why I did think that when he was able to make adjustments, especially at the stem, you really saw them. That being said, ball skills, I did have a little bit lower. Didn't find that his ball tracking was particularly great. There are a couple of bobbles in the all 22 that I noticed. He didn't have any drops, from what I remember, but there were bobbles, so I did give him a slight ding there. Relatively decent catch radius, even though he's not the biggest dude. Found him being able to pluck the ball away from defenders, especially in and over the middle of the fields. You don't really see him all that much over the top. That's just not really his game. You also don't really see all that much of him running too many like curls or any type of outbreaking routes. He's really just doing everything through the slot and or in motion. There's a lot of specifically he'll be in the X, but typically from motion, and he'll be able to then beat a defender from basically that already like pre-existing movement, which by all means I don't think is negative. I hit him, I think, a lot harder on athleticism than you did. I just didn't think that his athleticism really showed out to me. I saw him as more of just like a really balanced runner who happened to be able to keep his feet and balance particularly well off of contact, which did help with his yak ability, but I didn't find him to be particularly fast. I didn't find him to have exceptional burst, but I did find him to be relatively elusive. You did see this with his ability to also have relatively decent field vision. That was pre-catch and also post-catch. So he is one of those guys who kind of just has generally like very good awareness of the field itself. And you don't really see that all that much. It does feel like a pretty natural capability for players. It's not really something that I think is taught. So that is a perk for Germie. The last thing I'll say is that he didn't get dinged too hard at the blocking space. I did have him at a 61.5 out of 100. He was, I believe, my highest rated wide receiver of the day, which isn't particularly telling, but it is still it is still a compliment of some regard, and something to be mindful of. I think Omar Cooper Jr. was slightly above him. I think just off of some of the athleticism boosts there, but yeah, I had Omar Cooper Jr. at a 62, and I had Germie at a 61.5. So basically, coming out of this with, I like both of those players. I like Germie Bernard. I just don't think that with his current skill set, there's enough refinement in the route work that he's doing to make him exceptional, especially because I didn't think that his athleticism was as noticeable as you did. So that being said, without giving away your entire scoring. What did you see in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely where we differ the most was the athleticism. Um, I do think I agree with you for the most part from a route technique perspective. I think he displays some manipulation movement, peak moves, and stem nuance, some hip shifts in there. But again, this is another one where it almost feels like he's running routes half speed. But I made a note in here, like, I don't know if I'm mistaking half speed for pacing. And then I'm wondering if, you gave him a significantly higher grade than me from a zone awareness perspective, but I also I do think he creates a lot of separation for himself. It's just not all through route technique. So I'm wondering if he's just more of a space manipulator where he's kind of able to understand those zones, understand spacing, and kind of get himself open in that way. So I do want to go back and just take a
Good
look at
point.
that. Just for my own, for my own regard and to really make this grade, full and proper. From a ball skills perspective, 3.5 for ball tracking, hands, and contested catch. Really, I mean, you see him convert some pretty tough contested targets. No noticeable drops on tape. I did see a couple, a bobble here or there, but I think for the most part he is pretty secure and the hand technique is pretty solid. He's also thick. I wouldn't say big, but thick and strong. I think the catch radius is actually one of the better ones of the day and almost as high as you can get. Body control, I thought he was really good. Gave him a 2 in both of those. From an athleticism perspective, I just thought he had really good bend below the knee, which allows him to, make a lot of moves to evade defenders. He has really good change of direction and acceleration after the catch. And I just thought had an excellent ability after the catch. Definitely of the day, he had, I think, the most noticeable personally. Really good balance, just really strong in general. And I also think he's a weapon in the blocking game, dude. Like, this guy is so strong and so aggressive, and he gets latched onto dudes and he hangs on. This is one of the, I don't think I've seen anybody in the class really who's been a legitimately good blocker, but he is, which I think can really help him if he can sharpen some of these other skills, stay on the field and get on the field. And yeah, I mean, from an awareness perspective, he's certainly above average. I do want to go back and take a look at that just from the zone awareness. I gave him a 3, you gave him a 4.5, so that's as big of a difference as we've really ever had. So I do want to take a peek at that. Just to round it out here, I like you said at the beginning, flanker type. I do think he's a flanker type receiver. The route technique needs some refinement or effort, or maybe he's just a smooth operator. I don't really know. I'm actually, that's the hardest part for me to understand. So he's one who I'm definitely going to need to take an extra look at. Above average athlete, in my opinion, good all around awareness and a weapon in the blocking game. So I think I gave him a 64.5. That's actually a pretty high grade. Kind of in the middle or around some of the first, top 4 or 5 wide receivers of the class, just a little bit below them, but definitely nearing them. So yeah, I like him quite a bit, but I do agree with Jake. The foundational element of being a wide receiver, he needs some refinement in the route technique area, and that is going to keep him from being a really high end asset or somebody who I'm like really gunning for. But if he's falling in late second or something like that, like, I'm definitely going to be interested. Late second in terms of dynasty drafts, I'm going to be probably interested in that kind of player there. So and last thing I will say, I gave the highest grade he had from a route technique perspective was separation, but the second highest was manipulation movement. I did think he did a good job of looking a different direction than he's trying to go, selling opposing routes to defenders and kind of going the other direction. And it's interesting because, like, you look at the data here, 35.7% contested catch. I think I said this to Jake just before he hopped on because I was kind of excited to talk about this guy, but he's almost never in contested catch situations. Like, he's almost always separated from the defender, and that's a good sign, to be honest with you. Like, sometimes you want to see that high, but like with the way that he performs and when you watch it, it kind of stands out. You're like, he's never, and he's also not used downfield very much. He can actually get downfield and convert catches there, but he's just not put in that many positions to do something like a Chris Brazzell or something, which his isn't even that high, but he's not put in any of those kind of situations. But also, he's just in open space, man. Like, and I don't think that's really a scheme related thing. He's running dig routes. He's running, post routes and corner routes, and he's getting open on these routes and he's creating space. And so he definitely does a good job, I think, from kind of a pacing perspective and manipulation, a space manipulation perspective to kind of get himself there. So just wanted to shout that out when looking at the data. That said, he wasn't that productive. You can see it from a yards per outrun perspective, and that's going to probably ding him a bit. But I'm interested to see what he tests like, because I do like this player's game. So yeah, I guess. All right, finishing off here. You can definitely give any final thoughts you have on Bernard. Who is your favorite of the day?
Yeah, I think from like true grading perspective, it was Omar Cooper Jr. I think from like who has the most interesting narrative around them that could like really transcend what we're working through, I think it's Germie Bernard. It's interesting because we were pretty consistent with regards to our grading across the board for the entire group. And just a reminder to the group, that was Elijah Sarratt, who we had basically sitting at the bottom, Omar Cooper Jr., who we had sitting near the top together, Chris Brazzell, the second, who was sitting near the bottom, Jacoby Lane somewhere in the middle, and then Germie Bernard sitting near the top. I think that they were all really unique wide receivers. Like, I didn't find that any of the group were similar to each other. So that made it really nice from like a grading perspective, because sometimes I do muddy the waters a little bit, I find, when two guys have similar attributes and then I end up watching them after one another, and then I'll usually have some bias between their gap, if that makes sense. So like, for instance, if I'm watching someone who, like, let's say like a Chris Brazzell, right, and I'm then watch another vertical style wide receiver that I think is slightly more nuanced, like I'll find ways to give them probably significantly higher grading, and then I'll flag it for myself to go back another day when I don't have that bias. So
that's a great point.
That was really nice. The other thing that I did want to shout out is, like, through this process so far, Germie Bernard sits there at our, what is that, like our fifth, sixth highest graded wide receiver right now by you in total. So that's including all of our grades, which would sit there truly at wide receiver 4, because we have
That's
both
crazy.
Casey Concepcion at wide receiver 1 collectively. We both have Carnell Tate collectively at wide receiver 2. Then I have Zachariah Branch, which we have a pretty big red flag on, at wide receiver 3. You have Germie Bernard at wide receiver 4. And then we jump back into the Mekhi Lemons, Jordan Tysons, which I think at the end of this process, realistically, the two of those types of players will probably creep back over Germie Bernard and Zachariah Branch. Truth be told, I think Zachariah Branch, like we've talked about, all we have right now is access to his highlights, so his score is going to be inflated. And Germie, I do think there are probably spaces for us to be a little bit more aware, I think, of both his athleticism for you, and for me, some of his route technique concerns that you brought up. So I think we'll find some way to not average out between the two, but find some way to probably get back to where both of those receivers kind of belong.
Yeah, definitely. I probably need to look at Jordan Tyson again too. There's a couple pieces of his grade that I want to confirm and make sure I'm not selling him short on, like an elusiveness grade, a below average elusiveness grade for Jordan Tyson seems interesting.
No, he lacks. Yeah, his yak ability is honestly really terrible.
All right. Well then, yeah, maybe. I mean, that's the other thing, is like sometimes, some of these guys' traits really stand out more than others, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be successful either. So you need to parse all that out, and I think some of that comes through with the draft capital, comes through with the landing spot, like all of that stuff really is important. I'm not a rookie draft before NFL draft kind of guy, because I do think all that stuff is highly important, and we need to get all of the information and all the footage we possibly can to make the best decision possible. So these grades are definitely subject to, I'd say, minor change. We're definitely
Yep.
trying to do our best job the first time through, but we've been very clear about it. I'm very clear about it. Like, I will go back and, seek out further film. Sometimes we get more all 22. You have to do that, as much information as you could possibly get, and make sure that you round out these profiles, because you could be selling guys short, or rating them too highly if you don't have enough information. So just want to put that out there. This was a fun one. This was a really fun group. I definitely like Bernard the most. Omar Cooper Jr. right behind him, and then who did we go over today? And then yeah, it's going to be probably Lane, Sarratt, and Brazzell. Like, probably in that order is how I'd kind of just rank these guys quickly looking at this. Real quick here. These are good comments from the YouTube. You can say you've soured on Lemon. Very good. Well done. Matt, again here, I keep hearing different takes in Tyson's yak. Some say he's good. Some say he's really good. Some say he's bad. Yeah, like, I think it's because, Jake, you can throw your thoughts in, but I think it's because he has such a unique movement style. Like, just the way he moves is different than others, and he definitely, I think, is more elusive before the catch than after the catch, right? So maybe some people are seeing that. I just don't really see it translating to yards after the catch is the issue. I don't see him making people miss and creating that many yards. And so that, and also I think here's what's interesting is he is kind of stiff, but he moves really well, like diagonally, laterally, but he doesn't have shiftiness. Like, when I'm talking about Germie Bernard, you go and watch him and you can see that he has this like bend and curvilinear movement below the knee, where Jordan Tyson doesn't really have that much. It's almost like his whole body is moving in those directions, but he can move pretty quickly in all directions. He just isn't as shifty side to side, which doesn't allow him to make people miss as much. Jake, any extra thoughts there?
No, I think that makes sense. This was Jordan Tyson's the guy that I had texted you about, that I said he looks like a soccer player when he runs. And when I said
Yes.
that, I was talking about his movement of running reminds me so much of someone who is like going for a step over. You know that?
Yeah.
You know that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so like
Absolutely. Yeah.
the idea of like literally stepping over the ball to then pivot his weight. And I think that what will end up happening is he will have moments of success with it, but it honestly doesn't translate particularly well, even in his advanced metrics. Like, his yards after the catch per reception is particularly low. Like, it's nothing that is going to, I think, translate
Yeah.
particularly well.
4.3. Super
Yeah.
low. That's super low.
And he also isn't just like this extreme separator either. So being in open field wasn't something that was noticeable at the collegiate level. So I personally like him. I think I had him a bit higher than Billy did. But I also don't think that he's wide receiver one in this class. I honestly do think that I am getting closer the more I watch, truly believing that Casey Concepcion is the wide receiver one in this class. And with draft capital, he'll probably end up being the wide receiver two. But we'll see what the draft capital looks like.
I think he'll probably end up being at like the late first range. So you're going to be getting, you can get into him if you want to, is my point. He ain't going to be anywhere up there in the top 5 if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. But yeah, Matt saying some people have Jordan Tyson as a wide receiver one, as you were alluding to. But the thing is like, I'm not going to have him there, but I think he could end up being the wide receiver one. This class is not good enough. Casey Concepcion is not slam dunk enough.
No.
Cardinal Tate is not slam dunk enough for me to be like, there's no way Jordan Tyson couldn't be the best wide receiver out of this class. I think that's a very plausible thing that can happen. Again, these guys like Jordan Tyson is still in the mid to low 60s if we're averaging out our stuff here, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a decent grade, and that falls right in the range with I mean, we definitely have Cardinal Tate and Concepcion much higher. I'll say
much
that.
higher. Yeah, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap. I think we have Casey Concepcion and Carnell Tate in basically their own tier right now based off just film grades.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, and now Germie Bernard in their own tier in that next group. And then you're talking about truly the rest of the class, your Omar Coopers, your Zachariah Branches, your Jacoby Lanes, Denzel Bostons, those guys are now kind of getting lumped into that next Chris Bell's. Sorry, I forgot about Chris Bell, getting lumped into that next group. So I think it's just being mindful of what the expectations are. We also are very conscientious that there is significant implications, like we're talking about, of draft capital to what this process looks like. Like, we can love a particular player. I loved Keandre Lambert-Smith last draft cycle.
Yeah.
I loved Kanata Mumfield last draft cycle. They grade well for us, but we still push them down. Javon Baker during his year, but you still have to rightfully push them down during those windows because draft capital is incredibly important. I don't want to say it, but draft capital is king in this process. So
and does Germie Bernard have work ethic issues, and that's why he bounced around everywhere? Like Javon Baker has maybe immaturity and work ethic issues, right? Like there's other things that go into this. And again, if I have Germie Bernard graded slightly higher than Jordan Tyson, but Jordan Tyson goes in the top 15 or 20 and Germie Bernard goes in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm not taking Germie Bernard over Jordan Tyson. That's not even close. And Jordan Tyson is going to be pushed up higher than where I would have had him otherwise, right? So
yep.
A lot, the film grades aren't the only data point that goes into our final evaluations for our rookie rankings, right? We are going to put those rookie rankings out as well, and those encompass more than just our film grade, though the film grade is important for sure. We put a lot of work into it, so not trying to downplay that at all. Okay. Wow. All right, that was good. That was really fun. Next week we're going to come back, probably hit on Antonio Williams, Tyron Montgomery, and then a couple other guys we'll have, but definitely those are slated in our next run here. Real quick here, I just saw some YouTube comments. Got to hit them. Sorry. Tyson down the wing. He stops in the corner and does a few step overs. All the pass backwards. Good one, Lap. Good one. I like it. Matt here. How about Concepcion's production profile? We did go over that last week. The production profile's not bad. What was it, Kevin? I can give a quick God damn it. How do you spell this guy's name? Hold on.
It might be under KC Concepcion in the database.
It is. That's what I just went to look for. Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. KC. Yeah, here, I'll throw it up real quick one more time if you're watching, and I'll talk it out as well. Just love of the game stuff here, baby. Come on. Okay. So yeah, Casey's production profile is off the charts. If you were watching this whole time, you saw a lot of light green and a lot of gray. Here you're seeing all just highlighted green, right? Yards after the catch per reception, 7.2, A-dot 12.3, slot percentage 34.4, not the highest, but definitely solid. 2.3 yards per team pass attempt. Yards per route run 2.46, contested catch percentage 66.7. That's extremely high. First down per route run 12.83, man yard per route run 2.83, zone yard per route run 2.53. All above average marks, all very, very solid marks for KC Concepcion. So if you want more on that, definitely go check out, I think, a last episode or the episode prior. I think it was our last episode. We went over those guys. So yeah, the AI notes for sure will show you right where to go for that if you want to check it out. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Let's move forward here. We're going to hit on some dynasty trades, and we are going to get out of here. All righty. DU2, this one went down today. George Pickens, the 209 for a 27 first, and Terry McLaurin. The value, I think, is certainly on the Pickens side here, but I don't hate the 27 first side. It's probably going to be on the later side for sure. I'll acknowledge that. But it could end up being mid. And McLaurin, I think, is going to pick up steam. His value is going to increase from what it is right now, right? It's obviously very low, but I can definitely see him getting more to the mid-second range. And, if we can get in that area, then, or even higher, if somebody's looking for production, you can get multiple seconds. I don't think a first is anywhere is happening anywhere for McLaurin. But I think this could be, you know, a 27 first and 2 seconds for Pickens and the 209. I'm not going to be too upset about that if you can make that happen. But I do recognize that the Pickens side has more value right now, especially if you're looking to liquidate. But also, he has much more production value than the other side. What are your thoughts, Jay?
No, I think you broke that down well. If this was something that was sent to me, I would probably accept it on either side, depending on the direction, on the direction that I'm going.
Yeah,
I think the
exactly.
most interesting part about this is the team that just came in second place is the one that sold Pickens and the 209 for the 27 first, which you'd think it would be the other way around. They're trying to add additional points. Instead, I did like this move from that perspective. I think it adds a little bit more liquidity to their builds. I think they now have 3 firsts in the next 2 years. They now have Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, Puka, Emeka Buka. Like, they're very much going to compete without Pickens, and you just add in probably relatively similar scoring from McLaurin. And honestly, based off of what I just read, there's a world where Pickens probably doesn't even get into their starting 10 potentially. So it's like, if you can bounce away from that type of asset, you have starting asset, let's say we'll call it 10 or 11, and you can get a first and similar point scoring production out of that. I'm totally fine with it. To your point, it feels a little undercooked, but I think the idea here is that you're gambling on that first being probably closer to the 107 or 108 versus the 109 to the 112. And you're banking on McLaurin probably picking up to 2 seconds worth of value in case you need to ship him at some other point in time. So I think at the end of the day, it isn't bad value. It's just that you could probably get a little bit more for Pickens. But if you really want to get into the 27 class, this feels like a great way to lose value and still gain points.
Yeah, and Joe has arguably, but probably not a super team, but close to one, right? And when you're in that range and when you have a build like what Jake was just talking about, this is how you keep the cupboard stocked. Like, you want to make deals like this. The more you have these kind of picks, the more you can add elite firepower down the road by trading them away. Or at the very worst, if you're like, oh shit, I got to hit the reset button, you can reset super fast. So if you have a good team, you can't rest on your laurels. I would try to, you know, use those extra assets you have and acquire draft capital. It's just super liquid, super easy to acquire the assets you need down the road or utilize them, as I just said. So I think that was a really good move, honestly, from, I think that was Joe. So shout out, Joe. Excuse me. Okay, DU3, we have Terrence Ferguson for DK Metcalf. I wonder if Metcalf's like value just in general is like slightly undersold, but like this is kind of where, like, if you were doing a startup, these players are kind of near each other in a way. Like Terrence Ferguson's probably a round or two lower than where Metcalf's going, but you're kind of playing the forecasting game here, right? You're like, okay, well, Ferguson is going to go up and DK Metcalf is going to continue to go down. So I'm going to lose a trade now that I'm going to win in 6 months to a year. So yeah, like I would probably have tried, I don't know what the negotiations were like on this. I would probably have tried to get like some kind of pick on the Ferguson side to, you know, take any of that risk away or at least mitigate it. But I do kind of lean the fucking Ferguson side here as much as I'm saying this. Like I'm not trading Ferguson for DK Metcalf. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I made this trade. This was on a build that is just kind of like oversaturated with starting assets. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been trying to corner the tight end market, even though the tight end premium isn't super, super high in this league.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have who do I have on this team? I have I have Brenton Strange, Juwan Johnson, Colston Loveland, Goddard, Evan Ingram, Hawkinson, Ferguson. And so I just found that my wide receiver room is like honestly pretty well stacked. And I didn't want to be in a spot where I felt the need to start Metcalf. I do think that there was probably a better way to get more liquidity, to your point, out of that trade. But yeah, this is something that I was totally fine. I think I lost value on thinking that they'll probably even out, like you alluded to.
Okay, I'm getting like targeted on YouTube for spam, so I'm trying to respond in the comments, but they don't want me to. Apparently, it's ridiculous. It's my podcast. What are we doing here? But yeah, Matt said DK Metcalf all the way,
That's fair.
and then was like, "Is it start 2 tight end, one tight end premium?" No, it's 1.5. But yeah, like again, that might whatever. I say 1.5. You say 0.5. Yeah.
There's a gap. There's a huge gap. There's a whole point in that.
Well, the way he termed it, but okay, I guess I should have gone off of the comment.
One tap means that 2 points per reception.
Oh my god, I never saw it that way before you came into the game. Let me tell you that. Right?
Yeah, you also never called it tep. You made fun of me for saying that too, so it's all good. What was the other thing
I said? Oh my god.
Yeah, you did. You're just trying to support the fraternity. I get it.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean that's probably the right take in terms of DK Metcalf. Like that, it probably is the right take. Like I said before, I think we're underselling his value generally because of this whole Rodgers situation. But he's still 28. Like he can have another 4 decent years in him. You know what I mean? Like it's very possible, especially if the situation improves. Like I mean, it's possible. It's much more likely he has 2 years of relevancy. And you hope that the situation gets better. But I definitely get thinking that Ferguson is not enough to make that move. Okay. DU5, we have Mahomes in the 211 for Baker and Trevor. I like that a lot. Like as much hate as T-Law gets, like I like him a lot more than people do, but he's not valued very high. Even after the end of the season, like 40-point games he was having, he was like, it's still impossible to move on some teams that I have him. And then Baker is unfortunately, an asset trending downward. And we're talking about Mahomes here. So yeah, obviously the injury is baked into this. You get the 211 on top of Mahomes. I'm taking the Mahomes side almost regardless of my build. Like that's a move I want to make. I want to get into Mahomes somehow.
Yeah, it was really build dependent for me. This was my trade. I did feel like this was the exact moment that I needed to start moving into another premium or elite quarterback. I had also just made, we talked about this a week ago, I had traded away the 105, the 109, and the 112, I think it was, or the 110 and the 112 for Caleb. And so I've really been trying to make an investment on solidifying my quarterback room for the next couple of windows. I also tried openly, because I'm very honest on this stupid podcast. I tried to package Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams together to try and get into Josh Allen, but that got rejected. Unfortunately, I was like, oh, it's 5 firsts, man. 5 firsts. That's a great deal. And the guy was like, yeah, you shut the fuck up right now.
It's 5 theoretical firsts.
Yeah, I literally just spent 3 firsts on Caleb. That's not theory. It's real. No, but yeah, you're right. It is theoretical first. So, my general idea here was really just to kind of re-engage and add additional points to the quarterback room by also impacting the rest of the league. I think I get that here. And you know me, I've historically been off of both Baker and Trevor. So having both of them caused me way too much anxiety, and being able to package them together to get into Mahomes did feel like the right play. I know there's a lot of fear, unfortunately, with the knee injury. And so I got to, I think, play off of that a little bit too. But this build is really, really baked in on trying to compete probably in 2027. So I have a little bit of window to be a little bit more conservative there and lose quote unquote dynasty value in this trade. But I think probably win it from like a actual, like, how I'm impacting my team and hopefully the rest of the league moving forward perspective. But I think it was a fair trade for both teams. I think the other team needed quarterback depth, and I gave them that, and it helped me improve my quarterback room. So I think all in all, it made sense.
Yeah, I think after I saw this, I tried to go and do a similar move in DU1 because I have like 3 or 4 mediocre quarterbacks.
Yeah, with me.
No. Oh, well, no. See, okay, yeah, I was fucking with you on that one.
Oh,
I knew you weren't going to accept it. I think it was like literally after I saw it in the other league. Immediately, I went and did that. But yes, I noticed you had it, and I was like, oh, I have no chance of getting Mahomes here. It's great,
I
fantastic.
was like, you realize
So
I'm the one who acquired Mahomes in the other league. I'm
that's
not going to
yes.
sell
I think
Mahomes.
we were
Yeah.
even texting like when it happened,
Yeah,
and
we were. You
you
sent it
told me that I was a
immediately.
dick. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's I was doing it on purpose, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I was going and seeking similar trades, and I was like, "Fuck, this guy has him. It's not going to work." All right, great. So yeah. All right, moving on. Moving on. League of Legends. Big shout out to Big Boy for joining and taking over an orphan that was left there. So very much appreciate you. Daniel Jones plus a 302 for Malik Willis and the 307. Now I think and this was Big Boy made this trade, so I think this was more of like get your feet wet, like I'm open for deals kind of trade. And his team is rebuilding, has the 101, like he's going in a clear direction, and he moved Willis in the 307 and got Daniel Jones in the 302, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Right. And so, like, I think it makes sense. Like again, I think part of it is like let everybody know I'm active and I'm willing to do business, but also he gets the higher pick. And then, like, I'm not sure Daniel Jones really recoups that much value, but there's definitely a chance that he recoups similar value to Malik Willis. So, very possible. I get the move. So, yeah, I mean, either side is fine, but for the purposes of like what he's trying to do, and he just came into the league, I think it makes sense.
Just really quickly, do you think Malik Willis is a long-term starter in the NFL?
No, absolutely not. But I do think that short term you can get more for him probably than Daniel Jones.
Fair enough. Okay.
I'm just concerned Daniel Jones never gets another shot. Like, I mean, I could be wrong, but like the injuries were pretty. Was it broken leg and an Achilles?
Yeah, no, it's brutal.
Like,
I'm not saying that.
Like, that's a lot to
But
overcome when you're also
yeah,
not great. Like,
yeah, he is still young in fairness. But
that is.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't see, unless you know that you could really get out of like Willis plus. Oh, that was the 207. I wrote the 307. My apologies. It was Willis plus the 207. If you could add the 207 to Willis and get into like a 27 first, I feel like that would probably be like the best path or something along those lines. But like, I've already tried to corner some of that market. I think in that league, I have either 3 or 4 firsts. So it's going to be really challenging to get into it with someone like Malik Willis, because then you have a much smaller window and grouping of people to work with. But I do think that Daniel Jones probably signs a long-term contract with Indianapolis.
Really? Wow. Okay. That's
whatever long-term is, right?
It's
It's probably a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal with, it's probably similar to what he did with the Giants, where only like 2 years are actually like
that guy's made so much fucking money.
He really has, and he's still an absolute bozo in the pocket. First read king. But like, in all seriousness, like I just don't believe in Malik Willis, and I just don't. If I had Daniel Jones, I think I'd rather be patient on Daniel Jones. I don't think I'd want to be acquiring this personally. So that's how I saw it.
Twisted. Don't get it twisted. I'm not a Malik
No.
Willis believer. No.
I know.
I'm just putting out there. My point is that he's probably going to sign to a place where he has the potential to be the starter there, right? And that's going to kick his value up to at least a second. Okay. So again, we're talking about 2 seconds. Listen, if Daniel Jones signs a long-term contract, you will be absolutely correct here. I'm just concerned about that. So
Sure.
Yeah, Matt in the comments here feels like Malik Willis is a trap. That's probably the right call too. You've had a couple good calls so far in here. But here you go. He says, but I'll take the Malik Willis side because of the pick. I do think the 207 and Malik Willis makes a difference there, but it is completely contingent on you getting out of Malik Willis for something valuable, at least a second, maybe 2 seconds if he gets like a starting shot, right? Like then you're talking about 3 seconds for Jones and a third, and Jones is maybe getting back to first round status, maybe, right? That's the highest peak I think he gets back to, even with a long-term contract. Yeah. Matt's killing it tonight. Billy loves Malik Willis. You bastard. No, I do not. Oh my goodness. Okay, good stuff. All right.
80% exposure, rostership.
Yeah, that's a good process trade to talk about though. That's a fun one. Like it's not like a super high value trade, but it's like a
Yeah.
very process oriented trade. That's very interesting. You got to have some foresight there too. Okay, 1 QB league here. This is a kind of like a home dynasty league that I have. 10 team league, not super flex. Like I said, 1 QB, full PPR. 27 first, mid to late. It's my own first, and I just lost this league. I think I just came in second in this league for the second or third time, like in a row. So the team's very good, is my point. So
Are you sure you want to say that out loud?
I mean, look, I'm destined to fail in that league. Apparently, it is what it is. 27 mid to late first plus David Montgomery for Quinshawn Judkins. What do you think?
I think it's Quinshawn Judkins, but we had, I think, this conversation via text. I do very much believe that Judkins probably gets into that like 2 first region, and truth be told, in 1 QB, I feel like that's even more reasonable. I don't have a lot of faith that Monty is ever going to be Monty again, so getting him off as like a fictional plus feels like good value here. And yeah, once again, it's 1 QB. So even like the back half of the first just isn't really as alluring as it would be in Superflex. So yeah, like I'm looking at your roster. It's insane. Marion Hampton, Jonathan Taylor, Quinshawn Judkins, Travis Etienne. And then you got Puka, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Emeka Ibuka. I have 15 kids, Tyreek Hill, Harold Fannin, Mark Andrews, and Brenton Strange. Like I just don't foresee that team not contending again. So I'm all for knowingly giving up the 109 to 112 in 1 QB for Judkins. It feels like a pretty big smash, even in a class that people are very, very excited about.
Yeah, and I have somebody else's pick this year. I have the 109, and I tried to move that one first, but they came back with this pretty much, and they were like, I don't want the 109 in this class. And I was like, yeah, that honestly, I understand that. And I think this is going to be the 109, 10, 11 because it's mine, right? So it'll be 109 to 112 probably. And so I'm comfortable giving that up for a guy who I think is well worth that pick. Yeah. And I do agree with this, Matt in the comments. I like Judkins a lot, but the Browns are sad. I definitely agree. It's a little concerning also. Judkins is still in a walking boot, like a big one. And so it's like I may not get the benefit of him until very late this year, or it may be in 27. Like that may be when I get the benefit of him truly. More so, not necessarily just because of the injury, but what Matt is saying. The Browns are a terrible offense right now. Unless they get a QB upgrade or, make some big moves, big splash moves in the draft and free agency, it's going to be tough. That said, he was in a tough situation last year and he looked pretty good. So if he can get back to form, I'm confident that, the talent will win out in this situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking the pick. Fuck it. I did see, is that true? You have another 27 first?
You're taking the pick? Is that what you said?
Sorry, I meant to say the player. I guess that was a Freudian slip. Because I was thinking, because I saw that you still have another 27 first on Dynasty Daddy, so I was curious if you did have 27 first.
I used to. Let me see. For some reason, I don't think I do anymore. Oh, yeah, I do. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
So you have your 27 first? Or
sorry, yeah, I traded away somebody else's, but their team is solid. Yeah, I remember looking at it. Yeah, their team is probably like 108 to 111 range.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm gonna win.
Oh well, it's actually this changes everything.
I'm sorry,
it's a 10-team league.
10-team league. Yes.
Oh god, this motherfucker doesn't give all the details before we go into these trades.
I did. I said it was a 10.
Did you say 10?
I said it. Yes,
damn.
I did.
I
just misspoke. I just misspoke about the 111, 112 thing.
All right.
But
all right. Fair. All right. I think on that note, since it's an hour and 50 minutes, I think we
holy fuck. Yeah, so now that your eye's gone, this is going to be a problem for us. We will go far too long, which is probably enjoyable for the listeners, but wife will not be as happy. But that's okay. These are very fun episodes. I love just being able to lay it all out there. So very fun. Again, shout out to Uriah. We'll miss him on the pod, but we'll definitely be able to catch him in the Discord. Anybody who wants to link up with him, that is where to find him. Other than that, very fun episode. Jake, thank you for being here. Very excited for the future episodes and the future prospect profiles. If anybody wants to connect with us, at Dynasty Underdog on all the socials. And I try to put the Discord link in all the episodes. I'll keep trying to do that. That's where you can find it. If not, reach out to me on Twitter or wherever, at Willie Beeman FF or something like that. You can find me there. It's pretty much the only other place other than the Discord that I'll catch it. So other than that, shout out to all the listeners who are here live. Thank you all. We'll catch you on the Discord and next week. Peace out, fam.